Hi everybody, welcome to our last game of the day video from the Tata Steel Masters, the chess super tournament played in Wijk aan Zee in Holland, where the last round was played today. Going into that last round, there were still a bunch of players with a shot at victory. Anish Giri leading the field, followed by Alireza Firouzja, Fabian Caruana and his compatriot Jorden van Foreest, all half point behind Andrei Yesipenko, still with theoretical chances. As game of the day, we have chosen the encounter between Jorden van Foreest, the other Dutchman with the white pieces, against Nils Grandelius, who's in the middle of the field, but always an entertaining player. And the game becomes another debate in the Najdorf, a popular opening in this tournament that has taken quite a beating. Here you can see the usual arrows illustrating all of the white options in this position. I'm sure one or two are missing, like rook g1. You can see already, it's not on there. But out of all these moves, Jorden van Foreest chooses one that Nils Grandelius had already faced in this tournament against the world champion. The move queen to d3. Not exactly high on that list of possible options, but probably Jorden saw something he liked in this game between Carlsen and Nils Grandelius. And Grandelius deviates from his game against the world champion quickly. In that game, he had chosen pawn to e6, a4, knight c6. But after takes, I think queen g3, he suffered and later on lost the game. Although I don't think the opening was to blame. This time around, though, Nils has come prepared. He goes for knight bd7. Anish Giri's recommendation in his chessable Najdorf course, tending to go for a quick knight c5, embarrassing this queen on d3 if needed. Bishop to e2, pawn to b5. All these moves are the two sides comparing their computer preparation. Pawn to a4, targeting this pawn on b5, knight to c5. The play becomes very sharp, very move by move, very early on. Queen to e3, pawn to b4, knight to d5. Van Foreest confidently sacrificing a central pawn, knight ce4. All of this was played quickly. All of this still covered by Anish Giri in his course on the Najdorf. But here, Jorden van Foreest shows that he's done very, very serious homework, as he's been showing throughout the whole tournament, and he comes up with a dangerous move. Pawn to a5. That was not covered by Giri, who looked at the natural moves, knight takes b4, but then bishop b7. Black is fine. Or knight to c6, then black has a little trick. Knight takes d5, queen e4, knight f6. Hitting the queen, and once again, black is fine. But pawn to a5, interesting resource. Planning knight b6, also clearing the a4 square, which we will later see can be relevant in certain lines. And most importantly, making his opponent think by himself early on in the game in a very, very sharp position. Grandelius goes knight takes d5, the correct move, queen takes e4, and pawn to e6. This is natural. Computers prefer the move bishop b7, but humans usually would not play like this, because this sort of lose control of the e6 square after e6. You're worried about knight takes e6. There's also the very scary, which I'm sure Nils spotted, c4. Black has to take, b takes c3, en passant, and now bishop to d1. Going for a check on a4, which if you happen to be a chess computer, you can say queen c8, bishop a4, king d8, not a problem. But for a human, this position just looks insanely scary, especially if your opponent is still blitzing and you are not sure with the king in the middle. The comp defenses goes e5 and says everything is fine, but this wasn't going to happen. So Nils plays a much more natural move, pawn to e6, just preparing to develop pieces with bishop e7, short castles. Jorden van Foreest also castles, and the next question for black. Do you go bishop e7 and do you allow knight to c6? Grandelius decides not to. Probably correct, because of the queen c7, knight e7, queen e7. It's not so easy to continue development after rook to e1. Short castles, bishop to d3 would be a nasty little trick with a double attack against these two. And black is in real big trouble. So Grandelius has to figure out a way to cover the c6 square before going bishop e7, and he chooses the very human bishop to d7, defending the square and also keeping an eye on e6. The drawback is this bishop can be somewhat passive here. It is not doing that many active things. Computers once again are voting for bishop b7. And once again, they're not afraid of c4, b takes c, bishop d1 to give this check. But humans, once again, should be. And these lines only show you the depth and the danger that Jorden van Foreest preparation brings, because in order to equalize, you have to play very sharp positions outside your comfort zone. With the king running all over the board, Jorden has become excellent throughout this event of asking very, very serious questions in the opening. Very impressive prep. Bishop d7 played, and white switches to more positional play. Now that this bishop is somewhat passive, it doesn't look that scary from black's point of view, but Van Foreest's prep is far from over. Bishop to f3, short castles. Looks like black is fine, pawn up, all the pieces are out. But after queen d3, it turns out there's more to the white conception, because all of a sudden now bishop takes d5, followed by bishop takes b4 as a threat, even with all the pieces being out. And white would have a positional edge, and it's not so easy to parry. Rook b8 runs into queen takes a6. Well, queen b8 played in the game misplaces the queen and allows the second wave of Van Foreest's initiative to start rolling. Pawn to c4, nice move. B takes c3, b takes c3. White's still a pawn down, but creating some dangerous threats. Rook b1 hitting the queen, c4 picking up material here. It's just a long, long initiative. And the bad news for Nils Grandelius, who was already spending a lot of time here, is that Jorden van Foreest was still blitzing. Computer-wise, nothing bad has happened. Black hasn't committed too many sins, so that's not a surprise. But the line he had to play here was very hard to find. Bishop f6, pawn to c4, and queen to a7, counterattacking when at the end. Black seems to hold after more computer moves like here, here, here. White might still be slightly better, but the worst is over for black, and he should probably hold this together. Nils Grandelius instead plays a much more natural move. He wants to remove his rook from this diagonal. Goes rook to a7. Sorry, instead of bishop f6. Goes rook to a7. But the white pieces keep asking questions. Rook fb1, queen c8, pawn to c4, hitting the knight. Knight to f6, and now the star move of the game. Still played very, very quickly, so very likely that Van Foreest knew about this, or at the very least knew about this idea. Showing his depth. Knight to b5. Sacrificing a whole knight just to get two pass pawns in after a, b, c, b. These pass pawns are murderous. Actually, Grandelius decides, and rightly so, to give a whole bishop to get rid of the more dangerous one. If these pawns are left alive, they will just roll towards the finish line. Lines like this. Queen c3, smart move, exchanging the one defender here. Black does not survive. a7 is a threat, bishop c6, bishop e5. White has just enough support for these two pawns to win the game. So Nils correctly decides he has to eliminate this pawn. But after bishop b5, queen b5, black still one pawn up. The white initiative still very powerful. White has the two bishops, has the passed a pawn, and this rook is in serious danger of being buried alive after bishop b7 followed by a6. That's exactly what happens in the game. Knight d7, bishop b7, queen d8, a6. This rook is dominated by this construction. Still, at the very least, black can now breathe. He does not have to parry direct threats. Pretty much every move goes bishop f6, activating his bishop. Van Foreest also, at some point around here, maybe a little earlier, started taking time. You can't prepare the whole game. And bishop a5, the first move the computer is not such a big fan of. Computer wants bishop to e3, and after bishop takes a1, just bishop a7 says it's winning. Well, if black goes knight c5, then the very calm rook a2, queen c7, queen b6. And once again, the black construction with this rook so poorly placed and these weaknesses is going to crumble one day. So that was the computer's way to probably finish this game. But after bishop to a5, queen to e8, all of a sudden things are not so simple, at least humanly speaking. Comp says rook a2 is a giant advantage, but after bishop d4 it looks like black gained some stability with bishop to c5. Not so easy to break through with the square covered. The computer's not worried, it goes rook d2, bishop c5, bishop b4. Wants to exchange this guy and win the game eventually with the rook on a7. But Van Foreest has a much more direct idea in mind, which is extremely dangerous. Bishop c7. He goes after this pawn. But this idea had a tactical flaw. After bishop takes a1, at the very least the way Jorden van Foreest plays it, because he goes rook takes a1. Computers say, I should stop saying computers say, you know this is based on computer analysis. Bishop takes d6 was a stronger move. And if this bishop goes somewhere, bishop takes f8, king f8. Turns out that white wins this position, although white is a piece down. But no one really plays like this. Bishop d8, rook d1, and somehow the black construction collapses. But that's, I think, impossible to spot. So Jorden shows he has a different idea. Rook takes a1. He's now in exchange and a pawn down. But it does look like the black pieces aren't going anywhere. And white is dominant. However, here there was a concrete line based on a very concrete tactic that could have saved Nils Grandelius. That line starts with a move knight to c5. Very natural move. Both sides will have considered this move. But after queen b6, it looks like black is in a world of hurt. However, the line continues. Queen to d7. The rook gets taken, queen c7. West is over for black. And he probably survives. But what after bishop takes d6? And I believe this is what Niels probably missed from afar. That here he doesn't have to resign because all his pieces are under attack. But he has the tactical shot. Queen takes b7. When white cannot recapture due to rook takes a1. And the background problems tell. So after queen b7, white would have to play bishop c5. And white would actually be worse. Probably holding with his pawn, but not what the doctor ordered. So had Niels spotted this, who knows how the game would have gone. Computer says, don't take. Just as I said, I should stop saying computer says. White should not take on d6. White should just play h3, make a luft, and black still has to make precise moves to hang in there. But it does seem like here it's possible, like one line is something like this, and it did end peacefully. The rook is passive, but this passed pawn will make sure the white king can't just run in without any counterplay. So this should end in a draw. Anyway, none of this happened. None of these lines with knight c5. Grandelius plays the move pawn to d5 instead, keeping the pawn, but also giving up any good squares for his knight. And after this, it turns out that the numeric value of the piece is not so important. These rooks don't feel like fives here. The white bishops and this pawn on a6 just dominate. And small spoiler, Jorden does not let go of the initiative until the end of the game here. Bishop to d6, queen to d8, rook to c1. The white pieces just get activated. Once again, showing a disregard for material. There was nothing wrong with taking and then going rook c1. This rook is still so out of the game. The white should win this, but nothing wrong with rook c1 either. Just activating all the pieces to the max, making a luft for the king. Here comes the rook, knight f6, bishop e5. New ideas, like bishop takes f6, followed by queen takes e8. Turns out, the white piece just control the whole board here. Knight to e4, queen c6. There's more than one way to win this. I'm not going to go through all the lines here. Bishop d4 was also very, very strong. But so is queen c6, threatening rook c8, forcing black to make the sad move, rook back to f8, already showing how poorly this has gone. Once again, more than one way, rook c8 wins. Van Foreest goes for bishop d4, queen b8, and now pawn to f3. Wants to chase this knight away from the active square, the only active piece black has. And after knight to g5, bishop c5, or even bishop takes a7 if you want to do it more direct, followed by queen c5, would win the game. So instead of moving backwards, Nils decides to start a desperate attack, sacrificing this poor rook. Rook a6, bishop a6, queen to b4. If the queen could capture here, who knows what would happen. But Van Foreest just keeps his bishop pair, bishop to e5. And it turns out the black attack with just a queen and a knight is not enough to create counterplay. Well, it does create counterplay, but it's not quite sufficient to save the game. Queen e1 check, king h2, knight f2, threatening 2 checks, but queen c3, taking control of the e1 square is a good move. Queen e1, queen h1, king g3, queen g1. Nils, being tenacious as always, has spotted that there is still some checks to give, but Jorden is also a very good calculator. Rook to c8, knight h1, king h4. He probably had it all figured out. Queen f2, g3. Looks like the checks have run out. But Nils has one last bullet. g5 check, king takes g5, f6 check. And if this pawn gets taken, all of a sudden it's black who wins. For example, this would be checkmate. However, Jorden van Foreest finds the only winning move in this position, had surely anticipated this turn of events. Goes king to h6, nice little king march, and after f takes e5, queen takes e5. Turns out that black has absolutely no defense against the white attack. If queen d2 check, f4, and queen g7 checkmate will be very hard to stop. Well, black has no checks. Well, if queen a7 to cover the g7 square, white takes a little detour, goes queen g5 check, and it's checkmate next move. For example, king f7, queen g7. So, because of this, after queen takes e5, Nils Grandelius resigned the game, acknowledging the beautiful king march by Jorden van Foreest, which gives flashback of another famous king march by Nigel Short, who defeated Jan Timman in a classic game with this little maneuver: king h2, king g3, king f4, king g5, king h6, and checkmate on g7. So this is Jorden's modern version of it. What a game by Jorden van Foreest. Great preparation, great homework. It looked like all the way up till knight b5 he knew exactly what he was doing. Put a lot of pressure, and that paid off later, even when Nils had one chance, really only one chance, in this position after rook takes a1, bishop takes d6 would have won for white. Here, to stay in the game with knight c5, he also had to spend a lot of time earlier to just survive the onslaught. So no surprise, he did not take this one chance. And Jorden van Foreest then went on to finish in style, which, first of all, was a great win and an amazing tournament by Van Foreest. But also score-wise, it matters. If you don't want to see it, you probably already know the final outcome. But if you don't want to see it, end the video here. If not, we'll have a look at what happened in the tournament, and we will see that Anish Giri drew his game, and Caruana and Alireza failed to win their games, although they put a lot of pressure on their opponent, meaning that the two Dutchmen, Jorden van Foreest and Anish Giri, share the lead after the final round in Vaikanse. They went on to play a tiebreak that was incredibly dramatic. You could do your own video about that tiebreak, and I'm sure people have. In the end, Jorden van Foreest wins in the Armageddon after more drama. Jorden van Foreest wins this tournament in the tiebreaker against Anish Giri. What a victory for the 21-year-old Dutchman who just been impressive. Already had a great event last year. This time around, he came even better prepared, even stronger, of course more experienced, and goes on to win this super tournament on his home turf, starting with what is it? I think the third lowest rating in the field. He finishes whole point ahead of the world champion Magnus Carlsen, ahead of Fabian Caruana, then wins a tiebreak against Anish Giri. What a result by Jorden van Foreest. Congratulations. I'm very, very impressed and very, very happy for Jorden. Also one of the nicest guys out there in the chess world. It's a real testament to the very hard work he's been doing behind the scenes. For years now, you can really see in his openings and his overall play how hard he's working on his game. And it's paid off here. Here we see Jorden with his trainer in the event, Max Warmerdam, all dressed up. Great result for Team Foreest. Of course, it's heartbreaking for Anish Giri that he does not win this tournament. He was so close, even in the round before this last round. He had a great chance to more or less seal it against Alireza Firouzja. Then in the tiebreaker, he had many chances. So this is a tough one. Still, fantastic result. Also for Anish Giri, undefeated. The two Dutchmen dominating their home tournament. Very impressive stuff. Thank you guys for watching this video. Congratulations to Jorden van Foreest. And thanks to everybody who made this tournament happen. It provided us with great entertainment for the last however many weeks were. 3 weeks? So yeah, thanks for watching this video and hopefully see you around soon.